Welcome back to A Story to Tell from the campus of Dixie State University. Today we're talking to Vaughn Hatton, a candidate for District 2 Congress. How you doing, Vaughn?
Doing great. How about you?
Really good. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, I was born in '86 in Provo. My family then settled down in American Fork, and that's where I went to elementary, middle school, and high school. And then went on a mission to South Korea. And after coming back from that, I just went immediately back to teach English for a while. And a wonderful time. That's where I met my wife. She and I worked in the same office.
Where was this again?
Seoul, Korea. South Korea.
You met her in Korea?
Yeah, I did. We worked in the same office together as English teachers. And but then there was a new president there. He got elected and changed the laws for foreigners working there, so I had to come back home. And my future wife and I continue to correspond over email and so forth, and visit every once in a while each other's families in South Korea. And then after a couple of years, decided to tie the knot, brought her back here, and so forth. But after Barack Obama won his first election, that's when I really started getting more involved in politics. I started very heavily researching the government after 9/11 and so forth. I was still in school at the time. I didn't know very much about government. And
Where were you in school?
I was in school over at, it was American Fork Junior High, actually, at the time of 9/11. I was in 9th grade, I believe. And started very heavily researching government and what was going on in the world. And then after President Obama got elected, I felt that people were not voting on, substance and ideas and policy, but rather on emotion and image, and for a celebrity rather than a real leader. And so I decided to be a part of the solution, and I felt that was to get into the media and start educating the American people on what was going on in government. And after spending some time there, it became apparent that I was more interested in talking about politics than most Republicans on Capitol Hill were. I felt that they were very, very silent and very reluctant to make their ideas known to the public. And so I decided to get a little closer to government after Barack Obama won his second election, because it just seemed like all the stars aligned for us. We had a great candidate versus one of the biggest failures in presidential history, an economics genius during an economics disaster, a great wave of momentum from 2010. Everything was lining up for us, and we still couldn't win.
Why do you think we didn't win?
Well, I think that one problem, sadly, was that Mitt Romney was, of course, a Mormon, and there are a lot of feelings in the country, in a lot of the Christian base in terms of Mormonism. I think that was incredibly unfortunate, but that's one reason why I think. And some people have said that it's about conservatism, that he wasn't conservative enough. But when 2 million more people show up for John McCain who won't show up for Mitt Romney, it's not about conservatism. But I also think that he did very poorly with Benghazi, just didn't bring it up very often at all. Brought it up in one debate and felt defeated on that issue, and so just completely stayed silent. But Benghazi should have been something that he should have really taken more advantage of. But I think the main reason that we lose in any election ultimately comes down to our messaging. It's not our ideas. Here in Utah, Republican ideas have been allowed to flourish, and we have a balanced budget, a vibrant economy, a growing population, whereas you look at places like California, despite all of the advantages they have Hollywood, they have Silicon Valley, they have a port, they have wonderful things going for them, but they can't balance a budget. They're on the brink of financial ruin. Their economies are shrinking and people are leaving. So it's not our ideas. It's more about the messaging than anything else.
What should the message be?
The message should be just about the basics of what we believe. If people just understood the basics of capitalism and socialism, and how capitalism is, of course, a system where you get ahead in life by serving your fellow citizens under the law, whereas socialism and the direction that our country seems to be intent on taking right now is, of course, where a few people sit at the top, and the way to get there is to suck up to people in power.
Repeat that for me.
Sure.
The way to get there is?
The way to get there is to suck up to people in power. In socialism or any other system really devised by human intelligence, whether you're sucking up to bishops or kings or commissars, it's always that sort of a system. And that's exactly what happened with places like Solyndra and Tesla and you name any other organization that's being given all sorts of money by this administration. It's not about their good ideas. It's not about having a wonderful business model and great innovations. It's about knowing the right people in power. And that's a horrible way that we're going down. But if the American people understand that, I think that they would absolutely turn around, just like they did with Ronald Reagan. When our ideas are made known in a very positive, optimistic, and passionate way, we can get the American people's support on our side.
Sounds very interesting. Before we get into some details, tell me a little bit more about your family.
Sure. Right now, I've got a wife, and we don't have any children yet. We've been married for a couple of years, and we've been helping out my parents right now. My little brother has Down syndrome, and he's a cute little kid. He's a lot of fun, but requires a lot of work, a lot of care, and so I've been giving my parents quite a bit of support, not in terms of money or anything, but in terms of time and helping to take care of my little brother. So he's been.
Is he your only sibling?
No, I have got 4 siblings total, 4 brothers. Never had a little girl. My mom always wanted to have a daughter, but never quite got that. But I've got 4 brothers. I'm the second oldest, and so I've got one who is kind of more of an electrician guy, and my younger brother is in the military, and then another works in venture capital and so forth. So, and he's just getting into college as well. So, still
venture
fairly
capital. Explain that to me.
Well, he's just kind of one of these people that goes around and helps other businesses and kind of takes control of businesses and so forth. But he just barely got into it. It's really kind of his friend's father's kind of thing. So he's just helping out with that.
What decided you to run for Congress?
The major thing that really triggered it was after going back to Washington, D.C. I worked with Senator Hatch on the Senate Finance Committee for a little while with his tax team.
You worked for him?
Yeah, I was with his tax team, their tax intern there. And I was only there for about 4 months or so, but after really seeing things, because in the media it was my job to do research and then to call experts. And you find out very quickly that after talking with experts like John Bolton or Steve Forbes and so forth, that the research you did prior was just kind of scratching the surface. You really find out how much you don't know when you talk to the experts. And so I figured that it would be the same experience when I went back to Washington. I figured that I would find out very quickly that I didn't know as much as I thought I did. But in getting back to Washington, D.C. and really observing a lot of the Republicans back there and a lot of the officials and so forth and vetting a lot of the people, it became very apparent that while there were a few things that I needed to learn in government, particularly on the area of foreign policy, I found out that in terms of politics, meaning using words to get what you want, that I was actually far ahead of the curve. And that's really where we lack right now, is in politics. It's not in our policies. Our policies are great, but we just aren't able to message those policies in an effective way. And so when I looked at people like Representative Stewart, I think he's an honorable guy. I've read one of his books. He understands his stuff, but he just hasn't been talking to the American people about that. Whereas in contrast, you have somebody like Jason Chaffetz, who is on television all the time. He had over 60 national televised interviews last year alone, speaking to millions of voters nationwide. Mike Lee had 45. So there are a few that are trying, but the norm in Washington, D.C. is to stay there, be quiet, and just kind of hope that the American people will vote for us.